Over the course of time, we've seen many draft busts in the NBA, but there was once a draft so bad that the GM with the first overall pick voted against drafting the player that they selected, and it only went downhill from there. What's up guys, it's Colin from Next Man Up, and today I want to press the rewind button and look at one of the strangest NBA drafts of all time. The year is 2013, and this is the year of the bust. So the Cleveland Cavaliers end up with the first overall pick after finishing 24-58 the season prior. The Cavs are a really bad team, but they're in a pretty good spot for a rebuild. Their young guard duo of Kyrie Irving and Dion Waiters had put the league on notice, and contributions from guys like Anderson Varejao and Tristan Thompson were promising. The ability for Cleveland to select their favorite prospect to complement those guys had fans very excited. Now, unlike most years, there was no clear number one guy going into the draft. There was kind of a mixed bag of talent, which led Vegas odds makers to have pretty close lines on all of the top prospects. On the day of the draft, the top 5 favorites in order were Nerlens Noel out of Kentucky, Alex Len out of Maryland, Ben McLemore out of Kansas, Otto Porter Jr. out of Georgetown, and Victor Oladipo out of Indiana. But behind the scenes, the Cavaliers front office was cooking up on some different plans. The Cavaliers front office believed that they were all set at the center position. With Varejao profiling as a contributor and the thought process of going after big man Andrew Bogut in free agency, the Cavs knew they were going in a different direction on draft night. Guards like Oladipo and Porter Jr. were names that were thrown around, but many heads in Cleveland's front office had already rallied around a different guy. Anthony Bennett was a big-name freshman coming off an electric freshman year at UNLV, where he was putting up 16 and 8 a night. Many draft fans were raving about his strength and how he seamlessly jumped from the high school level to college, and how he became a leader for the UNLV squad. But what Cavaliers head coach Mike Brown liked about him was that his son Elijah was being recruited heavily to UNLV during that same time. So when Mike would bring his son to the facilities for recruiting, he would always walk away impressed with Bennett's ability and dominance in practice. This sentiment was quickly echoed throughout the Cavs front office, as out of 11 members, 9 voted to take Bennett with the first overall selection, despite some mock drafts having him as low as 10 through 12. And the only 2 members who didn't vote for Bennett, the team's GM Chris Grant and the team's owner Dan Gilbert. The owner, Gilbert, was a big fan of the Indiana guard Victor Oladipo, as he was the biggest name in college basketball and had an undeniable scoring talent. But at the end of the day, an owner shouldn't run the team by himself. He hires his staff to do that for him, so he trusted the staff to make what they saw as the best move. Grant, on the other hand, was the GM of the team, meaning he was the one that would make the final decision, and he still wasn't bought in on Anthony Bennett. Instead, he fell in love with Ben McLemore out of Kansas. McLemore's shooting touch and feel for the game had Grant confident he would fill a shooting guard small forward role perfectly next to the other players on his roster, but his staff had already had their hearts set on Anthony Bennett. Grant made the professional move and respected the decision of the staff when he selected Anthony Bennett, but it was clear he didn't feel good about it. When asked about the Bennett pick, Grant didn't use terms like franchise player or cornerstone like a lot of guys do with their favorite prospect. He instead told the media that he thought Anthony Bennett was a good guy and he'd be a nice fit. Anthony Bennett would go on to be maybe the most historic draft bust ever. But what happened to the other guys that Cleveland didn't take, and who were some of the sleepers that fell down the board? At number 2, Orlando couldn't deny the talent of Victor Oladipo. His athleticism and high upside made him a can't-miss shooting guard prospect that Orlando was surprised made it past number 1. Out of the gate, Oladipo was a flashy young player who excelled with the Magic. Oladipo would finish second in Rookie of the Year voting. He also had 2 more successful years with the Magic, putting up around 17 a night and getting a solidified spot in the starting lineup. But on draft night 2016, the Magic would move Oladipo, Ersan Ilyasova, and the draft rights to Domantas Sabonis to Oklahoma City for Serge Ibaka. After just 1 year with Oklahoma City, Oladipo and Sabonis were moved to Indiana in the Paul George trade. This trade benefited both teams immensely, as Paul George finished top 3 in MVP voting, and Oladipo became a fan favorite for the Pacers. After becoming an All-Star in 2018, things started to go downhill after he started struggling with injuries. Eventually, his time ran up in Indy, as he spent the next season playing for Houston and Miami. Just last year, it seemed like he had found another role in Miami before he was set back by injuries once again. Just this offseason, he was sent back to OKC, and I think all NBA fans agree that we'd love to see Oladipo back to his all-star caliber. At number 3, the Wizards went after Otto Porter Jr. Porter was a stud at Georgetown and was set to be an impact player for Washington. Despite that, he only appeared in 37 games his rookie year and didn't get a solid starting role until his third season. Porter eventually picked it up, and by 2017, he was averaging 13-6 on really good efficiency. This jump in play inspired Brooklyn to offer him a 4-year max contract that Washington chose to match. This decision would not go well, as Washington would send Porter to Chicago only 2 years later for Bobby Portis and Jabari Parker. Porter Jr. would eventually start to lose his touch and see less minutes on the floor. As of now, Porter Jr. has had solidified bench spots with teams like the Magic, the Warriors, and more recently the Raptors. I think Porter Jr. gets a bad rap sometimes, and despite not being worth the number 3 overall pick, he showed flashes of his true potential. At number 4, the Bobcats took Cody Zeller, Oladipo's teammate from Indiana. At the time, it surprised many that Zeller was selected over Noel and Len, most people's favorites to go within the top 3. And despite having a long career with Charlotte, Zeller never made the impact the Hornets expected him to. Zeller's best season didn't come until 2020, when he was putting up a mediocre 11-7 a night. Despite being a role player, Zeller never made a huge impact on any of those Bobcats or Hornets teams. Zeller currently plays for the New Orleans Pelicans, but he last appeared for the Miami Heat in the finals. And wrapping up the top 5, the Phoenix Suns selected Alex Len out of Maryland. The Ukrainian big man could never put it together in the NBA, and he didn't even have his best season until he left Phoenix. And even then, he never did anything too impressive in the NBA. Currently, Len is a bench warmer for the Sacramento Kings, but there's no doubt the Suns would have liked to have that pick back. Outside of the top 5, there were many other head-scratching decisions that we can run over. The falling Nerlens Noel went just a pick later at number 6, as the Pelicans looked to grab a big man for the future, but Philly traded for him on draft night. In a puzzling move at the time, Philly moved on from young defensive guard Drew Holiday for the draft rights to Nerlens Noel, officially starting the process in Philly. Noel had some promise, especially on the defensive side, but after getting washed out by Jahlil Okafor and eventually the dominant Joel Embiid, his time ran up shortly for the Sixers. Noel is still a valuable bench piece, and he had a mini resurgence during his time in OKC. McLemore would go number 7 to the Kings, joining the list of disappointing draft picks by Sacramento, while the more productive Kentavious Caldwell-Pope would go the pick after to the Pistons. Trey Burke goes at 9, and at 10, the Portland Trail Blazers grab CJ McCollum. After beating Duke in one of the biggest March Madness upsets ever, the guard from Lehigh would develop into the backcourt partner for star guard Damian Lillard. And despite being a household name for basketball fans, he never became an all-star that many hoped he would be. But at pick number 10, he was easily the best player up until this point. At number 11, the 76ers would take Michael Carter-Williams. Carter-Williams had an incredible season, winning Rookie of the Year. And if you want to hear more about his dominant rookie year, check out Banning's video on the channel where he ranked every Rookie of the Year winner since 2000. But as we know, MCW never became the star player that Sixers fans had hoped for. Then next up, we got Steven Adams, Kelly Olynyk, Shabazz Muhammad. Okay, I guess not every pick was a bust. Milwaukee took a chance on some skinny 7-footer out of Greece who happened to develop into the best player in basketball. Giannis was such an unknown in the scouting world, some scouts had never even seen him play, and many questioned the competition he was going up against overseas. But there was no denying his athleticism, and when he developed his offensive skill set and became a defensive nightmare, it was easy to see how he became the star we know he is. Giannis was such a surprise to some that NBADraft.net, which is a pretty solid scouting website that I use quite often, they don't even have his name spelt right on their player profile they made for him in 2013. So I'm sorry CJ, but we probably have a new best player in the draft, considering now we just added a 2-time MVP winner and a finals MVP to the list. From 16 to 26, we have a mix of role players and guys who are out of the league. The best of the bunch probably being Dennis Schroeder or Tim Hardaway Jr. But at 27, the Denver Nuggets select Rudy Gobert. As you all know, Gobert developed into a polarizing NBA player with multiple Defensive Player of the Year trophies under his belt. Whether you think he deserved them or not, there's no denying that Gobert's name will be etched into NBA history. Unfortunately for Nuggets fans, they sent him to Utah for a bag of chips and never got to see any of that success. Luckily for them, there's another foreign center they drafted in 2014 who's doing just fine over there. The second round kind of flopped, producing really no notable players despite maybe Mike Muscala, though I always did like Pierre Jackson. But there's no denying this draft was absolutely horrible. Without Giannis saving the talent level, I don't think you can deny this would easily be the worst draft in NBA history. I know 2000 and 2006 have their arguments, but 2013 was pretty brutal, guys. I don't know if we'll ever see a class like this again, With the improved scouting and reporting, I don't think we'll see a guy as polarizing as Bennett go number 1. And with Giannis making such an impact in the league, the stock of guys like him have improved greatly. I mean, just this year we saw Bilal Coulibaly rise from unknown to top 10 in just a span of months. So let me know, was 2013 the worst NBA draft ever, or do you have another class you'd consider the year of the bust? I hope you all enjoyed, keep showing love on the channel, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace out.